Susan, would you conduct the Finance Committee meeting, please?
We'll bring the Finance Committee meeting to order. Our first order of business is an action item to approve the Finance Committee meeting minutes from February 24th, 2022. Do we have an agenda? Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
And a second? All in favor? Aye. That motion carries. Before we adjourn, I think it's important for the Finance Committee and the rest of the board members to look at the future meeting dates, just to see if you'd like to attend. And I know we had a little issue with a quorum for our Finance Committee, so let's make sure those dates are on our calendars. So with that, a motion to adjourn the Finance Committee meeting? Thank you. Motion?
Thank you, Susan. I'd like to call the board meeting of the JWB to order. Ms. Mallow, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we actually begin, we have an honored guest here we'd like to acknowledge. Past everything at JWB, Jim Sewell. Oh, you don't know how much we've missed you.
Well,
Hi.
we have missed you too. It's very much mutual.
Thanks again, Jim, for stopping in. Okay, let's then move on to the action items or consent items. Assuming everyone has had a chance to review them, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Action items. Let's move to the acceptance of the FY21 audit financial statement. Lauren, could you
Good
please?
morning.
I'm sorry.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I'll let you guys take over.
I will introduce our auditor today, but we're here today to accept the audited financial statements for fiscal year 21. The auditors presented at the Finance Committee and went through in detail the required communications. And with us today, we have Lauren Strope, who will give us a brief presentation to the board. The audit needs to be approved by the board so that we can finalize the audit, sign the management representation letter, and then we will be able to meet our requirements. The audit is required to be filed by March 31st, as well as the annual financial report with the Auditor General. So we're all in line to handle all of those deadlines. So Lauren Strope, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, and thank you for having me here today to go over a brief presentation of the audit results for the audit of the year ended September 30th, 2021. So we have completed our audit and we are ready to render our opinion today after your approval. Auditing standards do require us to have communications with those charged with governance or members of the board. And as Laura mentioned, we did have those required communications with the Finance Committee. And we went and detailed the nature, the extent, and the timing of our audit results. So this, again, is just a brief summary to kind of go over that in-depth presentation that we did. So a summary of all of the deliverables, again, as anticipated, because we're anticipating that after this presentation today, management will be giving us the management representation letter that basically just says, hey, everything we told you and provided to you during the course of the audit was true to the best of our knowledge and belief. So the anticipated deliverables include the audit opinion, and that's ensuring that your financial statements are in line with generally accepted accounting principles, and we are issuing an unmodified opinion. That used to be called an unqualified opinion. It's a clean opinion, and it's the only type of opinion that you want. We also have to follow several different standards when we opine on your audit as it relates to government requirements here in the state of Florida. And one is a report on internal control on financial reporting and non-compliance. That's also known as the Yellow Book report or the GASH report. We are issuing a no comment report this year, which essentially is the highest level of assurance, again, that we can give you. We don't opine on internal controls, but if during the course of our audit we become aware of a material weakness or a significant deficiency in internal controls, we would be required to share it with you in that letter. The Auditor General of the State of Florida requires a management letter that is included in your financial statements. Again, that is a no comment letter or a clean letter, meaning I could take the template and essentially render my opinion on that. If a lot of changes needed to be made, it generally means that there's a problem. So again, we have a no comment or a clean report there. And finally, the state of Florida does require us to render a report on compliance with local investment policies, and we are rendering a clean or unmodified opinion on that report as well. We are required to communicate to those charged with governance if we find any misstatements or if we have any uncorrected misstatements. And what that means is after management has finished and given me their trial balance, if I as the auditor have to say we need to make the following entries to bring these financial statements in line with GAAP, that would be a corrected misstatement. An uncorrected misstatement is the exact same situation except management, for whatever reason, doesn't want to make the entry, and I would be required to communicate it to you now. I did want to highlight this just because if I, as the auditor, came in and had a ton of entries in order to bring you in line with GAAP, it'd be harder to rely on things like the interim financials that you're getting on a day-to-day basis. So it's a really good thing that you don't have a lot of misstatements or any misstatements. We are pleased to report that we did not have any difficulties or disagreements with management. They're fabulous to work with. Every time we have a question, they make sure we get an answer, and they make sure that we have the supporting documentation that we need in order to render our opinion. I did want to mention that the financial statements are actually an ACFR, which is an annual comprehensive financial report. This report is submitted to the GFOA, as Laura mentioned. That's due on 3/31. And they review that and make sure that it's at the highest level of excellence, is what they call it, for financial reporting. So I am pleased to announce that you did receive that last year, so that certificate will be included in this year's report. And with that, I think we have a brief presentation to celebrate the fact that you did get that certificate last year.
So we're pleased to have won that the second year in a row. Go ahead.
Oh, no, this was going to, and you're more than welcome to take over.
Yep.
But, 2 years in a row is amazing. The JWB team has been awarded the GFOA's Certificate of Achievement for financial reporting. This is just amazing. And last year was our first time to receive the award, which was considered the gold star of our financial reporting. I think everyone knows the Government Financial Office Association established a Certificate of Excellence reporting program in 1945. And it encourages and assists state and local government to go beyond the minimum requirements of generally accepted accounting principles, and encourages the preparation of annual comprehensive financial reporting that evidence the spirit of transparency, full disclosure, and then recognizes the individual governments or others that have succeeded in achieving this award. Lynn, we'd like to present this award to you. If you wouldn't mind, we'll wait till after the meeting, and then we'll take some pictures for history and and we hope that for his continued success. And thank you so much to the financial team, and specifically to you, Lynn, for all the hard work you've done and for achieving this award once again. And I hope everybody heard me because I never turned on my mic. But I guess I'm asking the board whether or not there are any questions, or do we need to have an executive meeting with the auditors? Does anyone think we need to?
And I wanted to just add that at the Finance Committee meeting, there was an executive session, meaning management and staff all left, and the auditors were here in the room with the Finance Committee members, which is best practice to do, to always have that opportunity to say, so what have you not told us yet? And I don't think we heard anything extraordinary back from anyone, so I take that as a good sign.
Excellent. Again, does anyone, Susan?
I would agree, and I think it is a best practice, and I just want to make sure for the board members that were not at the finance meeting but are here today, that we did in fact have a very candid executive session with our auditor. So unless you feel there's a need to do that, we're very comfortable with that.
Seeing no one, thank you again, Susan, because I'm assured that you would have gotten deep into the right questions. So thank you, and thank you again for your presentation. And I just had one question. Did you get promoted?
Did I?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
I've been
okay, well,
promoted.
congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
As
that.
soon as I saw that you were here by yourself, I assumed you had been promoted. So
I'm the
once
head
again,
cheese now.
congratulations.
Well,
Okay.
thank you so much. My contact information is on the last slide of the presentation. So if at any time during the year there are questions, I work for the board year-round, not just when I'm doing the audit, not just when I'm here presenting. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you ever have any questions for me.
Again, thank you so much.
Have a wonderful day.
All right, let's move on to the,
Motion to
we need a
approve.
oh, I'm sorry. I thought we already did that. Do I have a motion to approve the?
Motion to
audit?
approve.
Do I have a second? All in favor, say aye. The audit is approved. Okay, moving on then to approval of the removal of surplus and obsolete inventory. Laura Peel?
Yes, good morning. I'm Laura Peel, Director of IT. And this is our semi-annual inventory removal request. And according to the Florida statute, we must seek board approval to remove or dispose of, donate any surplus equipment on our inventory, all of which is on page 2 of the memo. All of the items listed have no net book value and will either be disposed of or offered to JWB funded agencies on a first-come, first-served basis. And that will happen upon board approval. So really, that's it. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
A second? Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. As opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Let's now move on to the approval of the budget amendment for Early Learning Coalition School Readiness. Karen, are you ready? Okay.
Good morning, Karen Bogus, Chief Program Officer. I will read the recommended action is to approve fiscal year 22 budget amendment for $787,444 to Early Learning Coalition of Pinellas County for School Readiness Plus program. And I do want to say, Lindsay, we do have Lindsay Carson, the CEO of Early Learning Coalition, here this morning with us. The Early Learning Coalition of Pinellas School Readiness Plus program has two components to it. One is a countywide initiative that provides early learning scholarships for children from low-income families, birth to 5 years old, whose family is less than 300% of the federal poverty level, and they are ineligible for school readiness match dollars. They are, and when we talk about the families, we're talking about asset-limited, income-constrained families. And so the second component is the Head Start component, where we wrap services with our club and the Y of Greater St. Pete for before and after care services of the Head Start program at 3 Pinellas County elementary schools. Previously, in School Readiness Plus, we were focused on those children attending VPK. And at the beginning of this year, we expanded eligibility to serve infants through 5-year-old children. And so there are 3 factors that are impacting the projected deficit that ELC has. One of them is that when we move from fiscal year 21 into 22, over 90 children who rolled over, a number of them were ineligible for school ready match funding because of their parents' income situation. And so they became eligible for School Readiness Plus. A majority of those children, over half of those children, are infants, 1s, and 2s. And in the chart that you see that we've included, those are more expensive than the 4 and 5-year-olds. So over-enrolling, more children needing School Readiness Plus funding, plus many of the children being infants, 1s, and 2s are contributing to the projected deficit. In addition to both of those factors, the third factor is
The market rates are considering to be increased, and I know Lindsay is going to her board at the end of this month to discuss that even further, and so we included that projection in this total dollar amount. In addition to this, we have two contracts with ELC. One is, as we're talking about, School Readiness Plus. The other one is the School Readiness Match Contract. In the School Readiness Match Contract, we had allocated $1,540,000 for this fiscal year. The legislature appropriated less than that to Pinellas County for School Readiness Match. So we are asking the board to be able to shift $540,000 from that school readiness match contract to address some of the deficit. In addition to that, to increase their allocation, their overall allocation, to address the remainder of the deficit. So I am open for questions.
Let me just layer on something. So the additional money in School Readiness Plus is the $787,000. All of that is within our budget in one place or another. So the 500 and some thousand, as Karen said, come from the school readiness bucket and contract. The other roughly 250,000 come from future programming, which included initiatives for, in particular, for 0 to 3. And there is, and we project there will be money left in that category. So we're not asking the board for an overall, what we project to be an overall budget increase in programming, but rather a shift in one, both really two shifts from different line items in the budget in order to meet the ever-changing opportunities to make sure as many kids as possible get good care.
Ms. Mulla?
Motion to approve?
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion's approved. Karen, don't move. Approve the Art Club Lemon Street Quality Early Learning Center contract.
Yes, so if you all remember, back in September of 2021, we came here to the board to discuss the intent of sole sourcing this contract to our club for the Early Learning Academy at Lemon Street. It is currently in operation, but they are not serving infants at the current time. And we had researched and looked across the county, especially in Mid and North County, to look for opportunities, how much opportunity for a quality early learning center existed out there. And so we did our due diligence in that, and then we came to the board in September. And we have worked with our club during this time to, as you see in the attachment, all the quality early learning requirements and components, worked with them to make sure they understood and are in agreement in implementing all of them. So we are coming here today to request approval for the sole source of $405,726 to our club for the Early Learning Academy at Lemon Street. And it would be due to open in August. Right now, many families are making their decisions for next year. So it would be, because they weren't serving infants previously, there are some construction things that need to take place and get ready, staff hiring during this time, and so they will be due to open in August for families in Tarpon Springs. And Deb Ballinger and her leadership team, they are here. They are in the overflow room if there's any additional questions.
Susan?
Yeah, very much in favor for this, but I am curious, what efforts are being made to actually attract the families, to get them registered so that we're opening with as close to full house as we can get?
Well, I would like it, here they come. I mean, they've been, our club has had this site up in Tarpon Springs. They have worked with many families in the Tarpon Springs area over the years. And so,
We were walking this, we didn't hear the question.
They were asking what will be the engagement, what are the engagement strategies to bring families into the center?
Good morning. I'm Deb Ballinger. I'm the executive director of our club, and I brought with me Judy Patrick. She is the director of our program services, and Sonia Meyer, who is the director of our early childhood education. So I'm going to turn it over to Judy and Sonia to talk about the plan for marketing and outreach.
One of the areas that we will start immediately in April is, let me back up. One of the nice things is we're currently already there and well-known within the community. There are targeted pockets of families that we plan to market to that are within walking distance of the center that may not be taking advantage because they can't afford. And with the funding, we will be able to offer that to them at a cost that is reasonable and that they will be able to afford. We do not anticipate any issues or concerns with filling, especially the infants and ones. There is such a need and such a wait list for families needing that care that we will start in April as soon as this is approved and hit the ground running. And we're hoping by summer, all of the slots will be filled.
Excellent. And a follow-up question, are you working with our neighborhood family center there as well?
We will be, absolutely. Our director is very involved in the community. She has a good handle on what's there in that community, and as soon as, like I said, we get the approval, we'll start publicizing and getting that information out. Currently, we do have a wait list. We maintain a wait list. We get calls daily for infant and toddler care. So as soon as we have the approval, we have staff hired, we're going to start reaching out to all of those families individually. We'll be putting flyers out in the community and all the different community resources as well as the family neighborhood centers.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? One thing I'd just like to say is thank you for doing what you're doing, because it's extremely important. And secondly, I would like to see a periodic update to the board, maybe every other meeting as you get closer to this, and then something specifically we need to identify or slate for the opening itself. So with that said, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. It's approved. Thank you, ladies, again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the presentations. Children Literacy Update, Patrick Pigeon, Senior Tech Program Evaluator.
Maybe he's
Sideway.
making a dramatic entrance.
There
That's
we go.
right. Well, I do want to say, of course, everybody, as every year goes by for me, everybody looks younger and younger. But Patrick is really a superstar relative to connecting our evaluation and outcomes with data. And you're gonna see that in his presentation.
Okay, now, Patrick, with
So
that
I've
introduction,
raised the bar.
please present.
I mean, if that was the case, we wouldn't even have to do this. We could all just save everyone some time. Well, it's nice to see everyone today. And so we'll do basically three things. We'll start with a background on kind of how we got to this point with these programs. Then we'll touch upon kind of the reach. So who has been engaged through these programs? And then we'll talk about impact. So I know I can't click. Yeah, so we'll go to the next one. So just a quick overview. In fiscal year 20, the initial award was granted. It was initially about 1.3 million to 3 agencies: the Boys and Girls Clubs, the Y of Greater St. Pete, and the Shirley Proctor Puller Foundation. Programming officially began in January 2020. Of course, the pandemic presented a series of closures in March 2020. But about this time last year, in March and April of 2021, we came together and we discussed some of the preliminary findings and some status updates on how the programs were doing, and then also some of the growth that was demonstrated by the students. In addition, an additional allocation was granted, which effectively expanded the program to effectively double its size. So today, we know that over 1,600 students have been served countywide, K-12. They represent 84 schools across the county, and they have been served across 23 program sites across what is now 4 programs within those 3 agencies that we outlined. So just a quick background on the scope of work. Each program was required to have an evidence-informed curriculum and methodology. They're intended to have curriculum alignment, disguised learning, and an appropriate staff-to-student ratio that would allow for intensive and tailored individual and small group tutoring. And then for our outcomes, I think you'll recall last year we came together to look at some of the diagnostic tools that each program uses within the program to inform their instruction and to monitor student growth. Today we will be discussing findings from the state MAP assessments. And of course, we also track program attendance and school attendance as well.
Patrick, I just wanted to comment, which measures we use from, 2020, 2021, and so on. We had a lot of discussion last year with Dr. Grego here about which of the measures we ought to use. And we had been so used to using the FSA. That's what everybody had been using for a very long time. And, now we know, but he knew earlier than other people did, that the shift was going to be to the MAP tool. And while Patrick knows infinitely more about what each of those are, it's my understanding that the MAP tool is really meant to be given 3 times a year, and so it gives feedback to teachers early in the year so that they can tailor the work for those kids, as opposed to finding out more or less at the end of the year, this is how you did. And so it was Dr. Grego's strong recommendation that we align and use that. The royal we, it's really Patrick, needed to learn how to use that tool, and there's been really positive, constructive collaboration between the school system data people and Patrick and others that raises all of this to a much higher level. So I want to give Patrick and others big credit for that. Certainly the backbone of that is that we have access to school data very locked up in our warehouse. So kudos to Laura Peel and her folks that we have that, and data analytic people who then magically work with Patrick. I don't know how that works. And we're able to use the same tools in the same way, applied in the same way as the school system does. So I just want to kind of lay out, that's been a lot of the activity over this last year to bring us to this place. And while Dr. Grego isn't here, we did have a really, he saw this presentation, asked questions, and was very comfortable with the conclusions that Patrick is going to present.
I just have a sidebar question. Excellent, because someone who has worked with the school system, I know that integration of data is a real challenge, so I give all of you credit. Could you do us a favor and give us the acronyms, MAP and FSA, the real words to go with those?
Yes.
Thanks.
So the FSA is the Florida Standardized Assessment, and then MAP is the measure of academic progress, which is very fitting because when you discuss how it's used, it's very much baked into the name. Yes. Thank you. All right, so right now we're just going to talk, this is before the analysis. After this section, so right now we're just going to talk about fiscal year 20 and 21, who has been served through the JWB programs. So that's all we're talking about for right now. So when you look at the ends and the numbers served, we have 814 in fiscal year 20 and 1,374 in fiscal year 21. You will notice the breakdown by grade level. Please take note that even though some of the percentages can shift and seem to decrease, the ends will increase. It's because the percentages are within the fiscal year. So it's just giving an idea of year over year, how have the proportional kind of grade levels of our students and participants shifted. So we'll get into this more on the next slide, but you'll see that the size of the program increased dramatically in fiscal year 21. That had a lot to do with the expansion that was granted in April of 2021. And we see a pretty significant increase in the number of students in that 6th to 8th grade range with the addition of more programs in our middle schools. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is just a breakdown. As you noticed, most of our students are K to 5. And that is, there's a number of factors that contribute to that. One is that as the RFP was designed, it does explicitly state that the target population was K to 8. Some of our programs historically, and this is true especially within more specialized academic programs, they tend to have greater access and recruitment and retention of students in that K to 5 space. There are unique challenges when you try to conduct that same programming in kind of 6th to 12th grade. So what you'll see here is for fiscal year 20, you see kind of a particular skew in that K to 2 range. That's because we had some programs that had already been ramped up and been functioning for a few years prior to January 20, and they were exclusively K to 3 programs. So I just want to be sure that as you see kind of that decrease in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, you're not thinking we're losing students. The reality is that in fiscal year 21, we just saw it kind of balance out a little bit because we had a greater proportion of programs that children could access. So those percentages in fiscal year 21 is something that's a trend that we would expect to be a little more stable.
Patrick, do I understand, though, that, for instance, if you look at kindergarten or 1st or 2nd, where the percentages go down, if I look at the numbers, the N, those actually went up. So we are serving more kids in K and 1st and 2nd. It's just as a proportion, they're lower. Is that correct?
Exactly right. So those are within fiscal year proportions, and that's of all students, K to 12. Right, so for example, if you look at fiscal year 20, that's the darker column. For 2nd grade, that means that 22% of the children served in fiscal year 20 were in the 2nd grade. All right, 16% of the students served in fiscal year 21 were in the 2nd grade. But again, you see that there still was an increase in the number that were served. I'm just kind of trying to give you kind of a cross-section of what the program looked like. And then it's a little footnote. I would imagine you have the slides, but there's a footnote at the bottom that does give the count of how many were in K to 5 for each fiscal year. And just very quick, I'll also kind of provide the context that in fiscal year 20, those numbers are representing 3 programs across 10 sites countywide, and students had attended 59 schools. In fiscal year 21, we had the addition of 1 more program, so 4 programs, more than twice the number of sites. We had 23 sites, and students represented 84 schools. So a really significant increase in fiscal year 21. Thank you. Again, as we try to kind of paint the picture of who our students are, and we look at a higher proportion of our students being Black or African American. Again, even though you're going to see some of the percentages shift, just take another look at the kind of the little N there to give you an idea of growth and then numbers served year over year. Okay, so this is the Child Opportunity Index. Just as a quick refresher, this is what JWB now uses in replace of the former high-risk zones. All right, so this is a statistic that is developed out of Brandeis University that uses a lot of publicly available data, census data, the American Community Survey, and it basically develops 29 indicators of opportunity at the census tract level. So there's 29 of these indicators across 3 domains: education, health and environment, and then social and economic. So just to give you a rough idea of what it looks like for, how they quantify the opportunity for education, they will evaluate the number of qualified teachers in an area, the percentage of students who are reading on grade level, for health and environment, and they'll talk about access to healthy food and green space, and then for social and economic, they factor in rates of poverty and the median household income and employment rates. So taken all together, that brings out a metric. It's basically 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And in collecting that data, we realized that nearly 70% of the students served in these programs live in neighborhoods that are designated as having very low, or moderate opportunity, right? As opposed to that roughly 30% that reside in neighborhoods of high or very high opportunity. All right, so akin to the high-risk zones that were previously used, and this is just another factor that we fold in to better understand the need of our students. Okay, yes, next one. Yeah, thank you. All right, so now, and we can pause for a second for questions. So now that was kind of reach. That is who JWB has served for the past 2 years. From this point forward, we are going to discuss an analysis that we conducted through partnership with the Pinellas County Schools from the winter of 2020 to winter 2021. So we have a JWB sample, which I will kind of outline in a second, and then we have a sample of students from the Pinellas County Schools. Students had to have matched tests from winter 2020 to winter 2021. And for the PCS students, they had to be enrolled in a Title I school. Our JWB students just had to have a qualifying period of enrollment within the program to qualify for the sample.
Patrick, just real quick,
Yes.
Is it on both cases that you're excluding gifted children, or just, it is both? Okay.
That is, yes, in our conceptualization of exceptional, yes. Yes, thank you for that. So in developing these samples, you see we have 481 students from JWB and 14,329 from the Pinellas County Schools. All in winter 2021, so anything back to like this December, right, so quite recent. They were either in grade 1 through 5, right? Okay, 1 through 5. Controlling for Title I students, right, so our PCS sample can only be Title I students. Here are how our samples compare across exceptionality and qualifying for free or reduced lunch. All right, again, just an opportunity to try to construct a representative sample of PCS students to compare growth over time to our JWB students. I know that could be a little confusing. Are there any questions with that?
I just think this is a super important
Right.
slide.
Yeah.
Because, down to this point, we think, we're looking at relatively comparable samples across the JWB-funded students and PCS, but then you go this layer down and realize it is a more complex, needier, if you will, population that we're serving, which is what we want to do. That's, it's exactly who we wanted to target on the one hand, but then we need to know that as we then look at comparatives.
Right. I just want to absolutely agree that this particular slide is the real depth of understanding when we get to performance, because I know we haven't gotten there yet, but it's critical to understand, using your term, the opportunity, the children that we are serving through this program have higher needs, you know, and so that will impact our thinking when we get to the performance measures. So I think this is vital. And I think this stands true for all of our juvenile welfare board, you know, outcomes and analysis. And over the years of sitting on this board since 2015, there's always been that conversation. Well, if we're performing the same for the same students as Pinellas County Schools, really, what's the benefit? But having Bernie and Bob here to remind us all that the population of children we serve come with even more needs. And so I just thank you so much for making this distinction.
I also think that as we look at this, we again remind ourselves of the years that we're in, so 2021, and the pandemic timeframe. So we were kind of in the high end, ebb and flow, and moving, yet the numbers went up in the amount of, you know, the children reached. So that's, to me, is an extremely impressive. So please, continue.
Sure. Okay. So again, same sample, same students that we just talked about. On the, it all looks the same for all of us, right? On the left side, it's our JWB students. On the right side is the PCS students. Based on their score on the MAP reading assessment in winter of 2020, so kind of think of this like the pre-test. We're going to go from winter 2020 to winter 2021. Using the PCS reading plan as a guide, we were able to understand children as qualifying as proficient, approaching, or not proficient. Okay, as you see on this slide, 57% of the JWB students in the sample in winter 2020 were not proficient, compared to 36 in the PCS sample. Those designations are stratified by the percentile rank a student is assigned from their MAP assessment. Okay. Okay. Yep. This is proficiency, so it's kind of a more granular look at that previous slide by grade. So not, and this is just our upper tier of students who are proficient. You see across both samples, kind of trending downwards into grade 3, and kind of increasing a little bit into grade 4 or 5, or stabilizing somewhat thereafter. I can't tell you exactly why that is, but what I can give as a contextual clue is that around 2nd or 3rd grade, students start to become independent readers, and their experiences with reading and the assessments kind of shift a little bit, right? So it is kind of like a critical point in the child's growth. I would also just kind of direct your eyes to the counts, the ends for the JWB students. The percentages are going to shift a little bit when the ends are a little small, if that makes sense. Right? When the sample isn't very large at the grade level, that's why you're going to see these dramatic drops. But you see that roughly kind of the curve and the progression across grades is somewhat consistent across both samples. So based on the winter 2021 score, students are assigned a projected growth to winter 2021, meaning that there's a certain score that they, if achieved on winter 2021, will be an indicator that that student within that time frame, grew the appropriate amount, right? So this is one of those kind of key points that we really want to drill down on here. This is one of the key points that our partnership with the schools has really brought to light, that this winter to winter period is one of the strongest stats that we have as an indicator of a child's performance year over year and an indicator of proficiency into the future. So by grade, we see the percent of students who met their projected growth metric during that time. For our JWB students, overall, it was 47%. And for the PCS students, it was 51%. And so, as you read this, the grades that are listed are the winter 2021 grades. So as I see the first grade sample, the way that I would read this is from kindergarten to first grade, 35% of our JWB students met their growth. You know, for the second grade, it's from first to second grade, 47% of our students. So that's kind of the idea that's being conveyed here. Are there any questions there?
Can I ask, this is progress, not proficiency at grade
Correct.
level. So for instance, would this be showing, progress for a kid who's 3 grade levels behind, that they go up a full grade level, for instance, or, okay.
The MAP assessment doesn't necessarily provide that type of understanding, but there are diagnostic tools that the schools use and the programs use to quantify that. And I can tell you that for the JWB sample, students were as far back as 3 grades. Most were about 2 grades. And you tend to see higher percentages of students meeting their growth rate if they have a greater space to cover, right? The further behind you are, the more room for growth you have, right? When you think about it, a second grade student is being instructed in a second grade environment. So if I am on grade level, the closer to the ceiling I get, kind of the less room for growth there is. Whereas if I am a student who is in a second grade environment, but I was assessed as reading as a first grade student, there's more room to grow and that environment is more challenging. It's kind of pulling me along. So I'm more likely to meet my growth metric, if that makes sense. Now in doing that, and to your point, it does not equate if I meet my growth mark, am I then considered proficient? No, that is not the case. Yeah.
But if I'm not mistaken, and going back in my thinking from the school system days, it's that reading by 3rd grade that's critical to demonstrate success thereon. And so when we talk about it, when you talked about that 3rd grade issue, that's when children need to read for comprehension rather than just the words. And that is the bell ringer for literacy. One of the bell ringers is in that 3rd grade period. So this particular slide is pretty dramatic to see the increase for that, because it is, if I recall, it is an indicator year. Okay, thanks.
Correct. Next. So now we come ahead to winter 2021, and we get to look at performance in 2020 against 2021 at the sample level, right? So we saw where our samples were in winter 2020. We saw by grade the percentage of students that met their growth. In the end, how did these populations shift? And I will just pause to give you a second to just interpret on your own before I share my interpretation. So I wouldn't fault anyone who would look at this and go, oh, those are very modest, those very modest gains. so we're all kind of seeing this the same way, for JWB, we saw a shift net of 9 students, right? We see an additional 9 students in that kind of central stratified space, which accounts for a 2% shift, right? You see it from the 17% who are approaching to 19. What is not indicated here, and what I think we have to know, is that this does not mean that only 9 students improved. In fact, 188 students improved their percentile rank from winter 2020 to winter 2021. 105 of those students progressed enough to advance in this chart, to go from either not proficient to approaching, or from approaching to proficient. Of course, though, if our net is only 9 and the percentage is only 2%, that means it was offset by some students who regressed, okay? And while we want to kind of celebrate the success of those 105 students that have progressed during this year, and we learn a lot from those experiences, it's also the regression of certain students that continues to highlight the need and what can be achieved within one school year or in one calendar year.
But here's where my struggle is, I guess,
Yeah.
with all of it. Again, we're looking at data in a time frame where the environment was just so dramatically different and changing. So if there wasn't COVID, if there wasn't anything and we were going at the same level, I can't relate to what the numbers could have been or would be. The problem I also struggle with is that, again, when we're back to the percentage numbers, right, and we're looking at 481 versus 14,000, looking at it and trying to do the calculation to get to the percentage base, if I don't look, if I didn't look at that, I'm saying, oh my God, we're in trouble. If I look at that, then I say, well, no, it's not quite that bad, but it's not good. But then I overlay that with COVID and say, wow, it wasn't, I mean, it could have been a lot worse. So really, what I'm really looking to try to find out is what was the impact of COVID? We've lost students, we've had, no time in classrooms, we've done things that are, in a virtual environment. What was that impact, and how will that change now that we're hopefully working our way out of it? That's really where I, because I'm struggling, as I look at these and saying what's good, what's bad, what's not, because of all those reasons. I'm sorry, Sarah?
I have a question about the measurement. So we're talking about a change in the growth metric, not in proficiency.
That's right.
And so was COVID included in that expectation of the growth metric? Was it diminished due to the circumstances, or was that not included in those expectations?
I think, well, the proficiency is standardized. I think the inclusion would be a matter of interpretation. And what you would have expected was much more slide. The whole prediction was that there was going to be significant COVID slide. So actually, what this shows to me is that there was more steady and incremental proficiency, which we would not have expected, given the impact of COVID. When we talked to some of the providers of the reading programs, they talked about kids who had to drop out, kids who didn't have technology available to use in virtual environments. To me, this is a little bit of a story of holding on in the face of severe potential impact of COVID, and we don't know precisely what that is. The other thing that I would say is, and I think we're hung up on the numbers, but remember, the purpose of percentages is to eliminate the differential in numbers. If you think about it, you're right that it's a much bigger group, but we're comparing a percentage of a certain group to the percentage of the other group. So the interpretation of the percentages is that they're equivalent. The base has changed, but the percentage is the same calculation based on that rate. And the thing is, we're going to always have this issue about differential. There's no way in the world we're going to ever have numbers like Pinellas County School System, right? So we're going to have a smaller sample to compare. But the percentages help equalize that out a bit. So I think that's important to remember.
And then that's, from a statistical perspective, I'm trying to address that in my mind, thinking
Right.
about how do they correlate? And then I just throw all the other environmental elements on top of it that just kind of throw it out of whack.
Well,
So I think your comment
right.
about, the slide was a lot less than we thought it would have been is a very positive one. Not that I'm happy about any of the numbers, don't get me wrong, but the slide is much better than I would have, it's not as bad as I would have expected it to be. And it just pushes me back to 0 to 3, saying, what if we really honed in on that earlier? If we're able to do this now, what will that impact be in the future? And that's what I'm hoping to look
And the
forward to.
unknown variable is always, when are we going to get hit with things like COVID, which we don't know. I mean, we just really don't know.
What I would say, though, is Pinellas County did not experience a slide. And JWB actually showed some improvement in this really difficult year. We don't know what woulda, coulda happened with those same kids, but what we do know from Dr. Grego is that his counterparts and other districts in the state, by and large, did have at least a 2% slide. So, that we didn't work with that data, we didn't compare that data, but as a sort of a level setting to know that most of the state experienced a couple percent slide in this very period. Pinellas County Schools stayed even, and Dr. Grego would say very much what you just said, Mike. He's not celebrating that percentage, but in fact, it's a very good outcome given the circumstances. And ours are even better than that.
Right, and the constant reminder that our children, the Juvenile Welfare Board children served, were of higher need than the overall population of the 14,000. And again, I keep coming back to that point. We're taking the neediest of the children in these programs.
Well, I think it's important to note, too, that even if the graph was very impressive, we saw incredible growth and a huge shift, the job is still not done. It's 1 year, right? So just as we saw those 105 students progress, there was a considerable number of students that regressed. And that's why I think JWB was very smart in designing the programs to be instruction and maintenance. Instruction meaning targeting the highest need students who are below grade level, and maintenance being the students who are at present on grade level but had demonstrated need previously. The provision of services must go beyond. If you just are proficient once at one static point in time, that is, hey, we'll take it if it if it makes us look good. No, but we will take it, but we need to see it consistently over time. And so there's just as much to learn about the students that are progressing as those who are regressing.
And I also think that it shows when you go back to from first to third, and you saw this curve moving upward, it's showing just that. So
yeah, and just as a standard of practice, most new programs aren't evaluated for outcomes until the end of program year 3. We're effectively at year 2, and year 1 was COVID. So we're a little ahead of the curve ourselves. So in fairness, the importance of this, I think, is starting to generate the conversation about MAP scores, because these will be a consistent part of our analysis going forward, but also establishing some degree of a baseline. Right? This was the first cohort of students that we had that had consistent participation year over year that could actually reliably qualify for an analysis sample. In a year's time, in 6 months' time, we would expect that N to grow and to grow. If you recall last year when we were just using the diagnostic scores from the programs, the N's were much smaller. They had to be. So I think the rigor that's baked into this is growing and evolving over time. So we're just starting to set the stage now. But we are excited to share it because they are quite promising signs. Okay, that next one. And so we obviously have discussed a lot about data, and there is data in this, and we do want to see children progressing, but it's also important to put kind of a face to this process. And we have one story to share with you from the Shirley Proctor Puller Foundation, the Master Kids program. That is a child by the name of Darian. And during this period, and this is a quote from Darian's mother, that he increased his iReady reading score by 100 points since last fall, thanks to Master Kids. He's using skills and techniques learned in the program. iReady is one of those diagnostic tools that we discussed last year and is used within our school system as well. It helps inform instruction and also allows teachers to monitor growth. For reference, 100 points is effectively the equivalent of 1 grade. So in this time period, he had recovered an entire grade. And what I can tell you from every program, our Boys and Girls Clubs, the Y Reads, is that there is a kind of a culture shift that's happening. You know, children are being engaged in reading. They're celebrating their successes with their teachers. And you know, 1 year, 20 to 21 isn't going to tell the whole story. But I think what's happening day in and day out, and the experiences that children are having, and starting to develop the confidence and the love for this, it's going to be really tough to quantify. I'll be honest. But it's just important to kind of ground ourselves here as we kind of move forward and set our sights on the next presentation. So.
Outstanding.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Again, as we look at this, I'm looking forward to seeing what the next years are and the like, but the programs seem to be effectively working. Not to where we want them to be, but they're working, especially again during this COVID timeframe, and whoever knows what else is going to impact that as we go forward. But again, great presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Let's move on to the Pinellas campaign for grade level reading update. Is Daniel, there she is. Danielle Hines, it's all yours.
All right, try it this way. Good morning, everyone. That was a great segue into an update on our grade level reading campaign. As you heard from Patrick, he talked about all of our intensive literacy programs, and our campaign really helped to inform where we needed more deeper end services. Our campaign is entitled Early Readers, Future Leaders, and it really looked at the gaps. Part of what we do is look together at the gaps of where things are needed and where the disconnect is. And I wanted to mention, too, that the upcoming LOIs will be more opportunities, and I look forward to that, for some more literacy interventions, because clearly we need them. The grade level reading campaign is really our strategy as a community to go beyond. We have, as you saw, with our programs, 1,300 kids in these intensive literacy programs, but we have a huge need in Pinellas County. So the disconnect or the challenge is being addressed through the grade level reading campaign. Today, I want to give an overview of our work. This is one of our collective impact initiatives at JWB, and we serve as the backbone and have since the beginning. And I think that's really important to have that stability in our community. So if we can go to the next slide. We started our collective impact work in 2015, recognizing that while we invest in a number of programs that are important, including the ones we just heard about, there are some core needs that need to be addressed in Pinellas County that impact all of our children and families. And really, collective impact goes beyond collaboration and is really looking at how partners and organizations can come together to look at things that need systemic change and attention. So as you can see here in this chart, campaigns are in 3 different phases. So our first phase started with initiating action, bringing our partners together, creating messaging, and this was really back in 2015 when our partners really saw a need for wanting to work together around literacy. In the next phase, we focus on more of the planning and organizing, so moving it forward. And the real systems change and behavior change we can expect in years 5 to 7, and that's really where our campaign sits right now. And the important takeaway with all of this is the ongoing investment of time and energy and sustained working together is really important. The stability that JWB provides as a backbone in supporting these efforts is critically important. Okay, and next slide. Here you can see how our campaign has moved from phase 1 and now we're into phase 2. So last year, over the past couple of years, we've been working with the Harvard Lectio Institute, or Lectio, and we've done a couple of different things. We have hosted educational institutes that are really intensive, and that's really important. That helps our organizations really fine-tune their programs. They get some literacy education, then they look at their programs and assess them, and then they're really fine-tuning to make sure that they're doing the best that they can around whatever they're offering in the community. And with Lectio's help, we've also, over the past 2 years, been working on other things, a leadership action plan. So in addition to having our community partners improve their work, we've been looking at how to improve ours at a systemic level, and really took a look back at the work that we've done and created a leadership action plan for moving forward. And now we have more of a strategic direction. So that's been really important to increase our impact overall. I want to move to the next slide, and this really shows us an overview of our campaign. Our vision has been the same, and as mentioned, that's a big stretch goal vision, as well as the goals underneath. These were established with our partners in our community and our larger systems partners. So we're striving for something really big, but we also have to recognize there are ways that we need to be measuring our success along the way. And as I mentioned, as we started our work, it was our funded organizations that said they really wanted to focus more on literacy. And so we convened partners. We developed our Community Solutions Action Plan, which allowed us to become a nationally designated site in 2018. And we also, along with that plan, we've become part of the state, the Florida Grade Level Reading Campaign from the beginning. So we've worked in partnership with them. And we've won national awards for our work and our systems level approach. So that's highlighted in, you have a handout, I think, at your seat. And this afternoon, I'm actually on a panel with the Lectio group, a national panel, because we've been looked at statewide and now we're being looked at nationally for really the systems level work that goes beyond the really goes beyond the important pieces that are setting the groundwork, right? All of the things that we do around book distribution and getting the word out, things we've been doing from the beginning, but really starts to look at how do you really move a huge system, a county as large as ours with so many partners. Next slide, please. So here you can see we have over 85 partner organizations. We keep adding to that. We have our regular projects that many of you may be familiar with that have been embraced by the community. Our partners are a big part of all of our projects. The book bus is going out again this year for 3 weeks. We have community libraries across the county in creative places where families naturally gather. We do a lot of book distribution. This past year alone, we gave out over 13,000 books, and we continue to support our partners. And the Lectio training that we provided, we've done that here twice in a large way. We went out to Florida, the state offered it at the beginning, and really it was an opportunity to see like what else can we be doing. When I was sitting in the first training, I thought, how do you get a handle on moving such a big system together in a community? Next slide. So this, you will see the results of our work with Lectio, and I think I've presented before, and some of you may be more familiar than others. It was introduced in 2017, and we took a core group of partners and did some work ahead of time. And really, this is an excellent tool for agencies to really improve what they're doing. But it also, as I was sitting there in the training, thought, if we can put these programs on a spectrum of services for us, from raising awareness to those deeper behavior changing programs, we start to get a vision of what this looks like in our community and what we have. And no matter where someone lies on the spectrum, because all of it's important, right? You want this infused in after-school programs, you want the message out there, you want books available, as well as, and really importantly, the intensive programs that are on the behavior changing end that you just heard about. You heard about some of those. To date, you can see here we've had 63 programs, 44 agencies, and here it's broken down by components of programs, but we've trained over 100 people on the Institute, and that just brings strength to all of our programs locally. And when we looked at this, just before the literacy RFP, it became really clear where we needed to invest more dollars. And other funders are looking at this as well. This kind of a spectrum and an approach really gets us grounded in what do we have and what else do we need to be doing. Okay, next slide. So where we are going. We are building on our momentum. We want to make sure that we increase the number and the quality of our literacy programs, that we continue to engage the right partners, and that we keep going in the right direction of measuring impact. So we've been working with our JWB evaluators. I know that's part of what you're looking forward to hearing from us about what do you measure in a campaign this large that's trying to do such big picture things. And really, our work with Lectio also has helped us kind of drill down and say what is realistic in a campaign this size, and we have to stay the course. You know, campaigns like this, a lot of them get stuck in the awareness raising and some really cool activities that are happening for kids in the community. We have all of those, and those are great and they're foundational. But I think the challenge and why we're being looked at the state level and others, it's really hard to do that next lift, but it's critical. And I think what we're doing now between our work with Kelly, with our Kelly from the Lectio Institute, and also with our evaluators is to see what can we measure on our impact. You know, the work isn't easy, it's not linear, it moves over time, it shifts, the partners come in and out. We continue to engage more partners and then try to find the right space to help them. We worked with our partners to do a survey this year along with our Lectio work to say, how are we doing? Are we serving what you need? And where do we need to be working together more as a group? We do also have a training subgroup that's been developed, and really that's looking at a few different things. From the survey, we learned that partners really need, and I'm talking about partners that are broad, everything from our local libraries to funded organizations to other funders. It's a broad group of people, and only about half of the organizations are funded by JWB, which I think is great because it shows this is truly a collective. So we asked them what they needed, knowing that they're all doing a bunch of different things in this literacy space. And what stood out from the survey for a starting place was building really literacy-rich environments that encourage kids, creating strong adult-child interactions within programs, and then looking at, and we're in the process of this now, what kind of frontline worker training? So we had the Lectio Institute, which helps you assess your program and improve it. But we have an opportunity here in our after-school and summer programs that aren't going to be able to do the deeper end literacy services that we heard about that are important, but do have an opportunity to continue to engage kids around the importance of reading and do some things that are more intentional. So that's a starting point with our training subgroup, I think a really important piece as we try to serve their needs and really raise the bar on literacy in our community in any kind of program as we look forward to more success over time and continuing to look at that big visionary goal and look at the outcomes that we need to be achieving under the larger goal areas, but then really within what we're doing, how do we measure our impact? You know, it takes significant resources, strong partnership building, working together, good communication and trust to really do these collective impact initiatives. And I just want to thank JWB for seeing the value, which I think is huge, in looking at how we as a community around this subject, childhood hunger, and several others, how do we work together to fill gaps and think about systemic issues?
Seeing no questions?
Wonderful report.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Wonderful report. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. We really
Thank
do
you.
appreciate it, and great presentation.
Yeah, I want to brag on Danielle and her team, and having been participants in a whole bunch of other collective impacts, and then being a participant, before I was JWB, with JWB's collective impact work, it's like night and day. I think Danielle was kind when she said, many of these efforts don't get past the first stage, it's a heavy lift. My experience was most of them, somebody had a really good idea, let's all get together and let's talk, and then it really didn't go any further than that. And I think the secret sauce is that we are actually dedicating people time to be the backbone, and we have really good people like Danielle doing that. And again, having experienced it as a participant as well, JWB has created this atmosphere, Danielle creates this atmosphere of let's keep our eye on what we're trying to do for the kids. And, this is not a competition. This is, we really are all in this together, which is fine to say, but how do you create that culture among the providers? And Danielle does a really good job of that. And I saw in the Hunger Group people doing things they'd just never done before or never worked together before. And amazingly, she put a spell over them, and by golly, they started doing amazing things. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Val. I want to just recognize, too, our partners, and I have two amazing staff, Joanna and Michael, who work tirelessly around these issues. And then in the community, we have some really amazing partners, some who are sitting in the room with me and outside. So I think that's key, too. Thank you very much.
Okay. The 8th Annual Children's Summit and Annual Report video, Linda?
Good morning. Linda Leedy, Chief Administrative Officer. I'll be brief this morning, but I want to just highlight that JWB had our 8th Annual Children's Summit virtually on February 18th, and our theme was Restoring Hope. We had 700 registrants, and 660 of them actually showed up, logged in, and were there. Which for somebody who was behind the scenes presenting and moderating, it was much easier not to see 700 people in front of me. The summit was kicked off by our board chair, Mike McCurrick. Beth, our CEO, gave welcome remarks, and then it was closed out by our vice chair, the Honorable Patrice Moore. Our educational program was focused on youth mental health, and we had two panels of experts who were amazing. I moderated the first panel, and our experts talked about the current state of youth mental health on the national, state, and local levels. And then Becky Albert, who leads our Children's Mental Health Initiative, moderated the second panel, which focused on what Pinellas County is already doing to address these really great needs. We received outstanding feedback both in the chat and then afterwards from attendees, many of whom were pretty shocked at some of the data that was presented, and then also very impressed with the work that the community has already started and the progress that we've already made. I would say it was a great success. Next year, we're hoping to do it in person. We probably won't be able to fit 700 people in any room in Pinellas County. We'll have to lower the invite list, but we are looking forward to doing it in person. As you know, our annual summit is where we always showcase the work of JWB staff and our funded agencies for the prior year through our annual report video. And this year, like all the others, was a knockout video produced, I want to do a shout out, produced by our videographer. Did she come in? Gail, stand up. Gail Kellen Christensen. She and our communications team did a fabulous job capturing, as you're going to see in a minute, all the fabulous work of our staff that supported all of our funded agencies and all of the kids that really benefited from all of our work. So if there's no questions about the summit, we're going to dim the lights and play the video for you. Oh, and if you didn't get to participate in the summit, we're sending the link out by tomorrow on YouTube at JWB Pinellas. If you didn't watch it, I certainly would encourage you to do so because it provided some great information. With that, dim the lights.
For 75 years, the Juvenile Welfare Board has existed to meet the most pressing and immediate needs of Pinellas County children. We ensure they are ready to learn, ready to succeed, and ready to thrive in homes, schools, and neighborhoods that are healthy and safe. But nothing underscores the value of JWB like a global pandemic. As 2020 came to an end, we realized we were not in a sprint, but in a marathon. We adjusted our new normal and began to shift from crisis to calm. Our programs reopened safely and cautiously as parents returned to work. New relationships were built and existing ones strengthened. And we used data to become even more predictive and proactive, filling in the missing pieces to strengthen children and families and to restore hope.
In year one of our new strategic plan, JWB staff didn't miss a beat. We launched a 0 to 3 think tank to focus on baby's first 1,000 days, hosted a virtual children's summit on early brain development, and laid groundwork to support parents and grandparents as their child's first teachers. We hired new staff to implement our strategic goals including a Chief Evaluation and Innovation Officer, and developed 2 new data systems. JWB's Fatherhood Collaborative continued to support dads and give them a voice. Plus, our school-based health clinics were vital in offering COVID vaccines, testing, and more. We called on our volunteers to help sustain efforts such as infant-safe sleep and grade-level reading, formed a staff-led Equity Leadership Council, and sponsored multiple trainings, conferences, and community events. JWB's 3 community councils returned to in-person meetings, welcomed new appointments, and continued to bridge JWB with the people they serve. And we celebrated 75 years of putting children first with a staff appreciation picnic. We also recognized a dozen amazing Kids First awardees for making a difference during the pandemic. Received our first ever Gold Star Award for Excellence in Financial Reporting. And our CEO, Beth Houghton, was presented with the key to the city by the mayor of St. Petersburg. We welcomed 2 new members to the JWB board, State Attorney Bruce Bartlett and Public Defender Sarah Mallow, who filled seats vacated by their long-serving, highly regarded predecessors.
Last year, our board felt the weight of the loss of 2 exceptional leaders
Bob Dillinger, who retired from public service as our public defender, and then the untimely death of our state attorney, Bernie McCabe. These fierce advocates for kids inspired our board to create the first ever Dillinger-McCabe Leadership Award. What we wanted to do is honor their legacy of always putting children first.
Last year, JWB invested $87 million to improve children's futures. This includes $1.5 million for program capital improvements, focused primarily on COVID. In total, we served more than 58,000. Plus, thousands more benefited from collective work to address childhood hunger, grade-level reading, and preventable child deaths. In a year packed with pivoting to respond to emerging needs, what were some of the gaps JWB and our partners filled? As many struggle to meet basic needs, JWB and our partners helped keep families in their homes and their children nourished. JWB's Family Services Initiative offered real-time support to 8,000 families last year. Through a partnership with the county, FSI navigators aided families in applying for federal rent assistance, keeping hundreds in their homes. And when federal funds ended mid-year, JWB leveraged relationships to offer stopgap legal and rent assistance until new dollars arrived, helping to prevent evictions. Area food banks and pantries saw a 200% increase in need during the pandemic. Long lines of cars continue to circle city blocks. And half were families with children who had never sought assistance before. JWB responded to this historic need by increasing our investments in food, to include establishing a centralized hub for county-wide distribution efforts. We also leaned on existing Childhood Hunger Initiative partners to nourish children during summer months and fill other food gaps. Last year, JWB invested $2.2 million to nourish children, and our combined efforts distributed 2.7 million meals to kids. While children and their caregivers face stress and anxiety exacerbated by the pandemic, JWB's Children's Mental Health Initiative continued growing hope. The Children's Mental Health Initiative, which integrates behavioral health within pediatric settings for prevention, early detection, and intervention, screened more than 9,000 children for adverse childhood experiences last year. Plus, pediatricians increased their knowledge and comfort with identifying, diagnosing, and treating low to moderate mental health conditions. JWB and our partners were also involved in efforts to prevent youth suicides and promote positive mental health. Year-to-year data reveals a 200% increase in access to behavioral health services, with more than 2,400 children supported within pediatric settings, many receiving same-day services. Despite workforce shortages and a summer spike in COVID-positive cases, JWB's child and youth care programs reopened to ensure children were ready to learn and succeed. JWB's childcare, summer, and out-of-school time programs filled essential gaps, as in-person learning for students resumed and parents returned to work. In an effort to stabilize their workforce, JWB released a survey to access program needs, devoted $50,000 for early childhood education degree scholarships, and hosted a virtual conference for 500 out-of-school time staff to promote professional development, resiliency building, and retention.
We took a break in 2020 for obvious reasons, but we're back. And while we can't all be in the same room, we are very excited about the energy in this conference. With so many of you at watch sites and watch parties, we all feel your energy through the screen. We know you are the front line, the bridge to our county's youth, and we appreciate all you do every day to inspire, motivate, and teach our children.
JWB's grade level reading campaign continued to offer literacy trainings and support, promoted positive school attendance starting in kindergarten, and distributed nearly 13,000 children's books last year. We also expanded investments in literacy instruction and outreach programs, launched Reach Out and Read with area pediatric practices, and warmly welcomed the return of the Summer Book Bus, giving away books at 50 stops to combat summer learning loss. Filling gaps and rising to the occasion during the pandemic were JWB's 9 neighborhood family centers, who serve as trusted hubs in their communities. Often the first place where families turn for help, the family centers distributed food, helped families access federal relief, and hosted COVID vaccine and testing clinics.
JWB is a powerful force in our community. We value every child, we embrace collaboration, are accountable and results-driven. We pursue innovation and strive for equity, diversity, and inclusion in all that we do. Last year, JWB partnered in meaningful ways to improve the lives of children and families. We listened with the willingness to be influenced, used data to guide our investments, sought out creative solutions to be that answer for kids, fit pieces together to fill existing gaps, pivoted when necessary, and recommitted ourselves to restoring hope.
Once again, excuse me, that was an amazing video. Gail, thank you. Thank you, your team. It's good to see you in person again. You know, we've been all watching you on TV as in an alias, but, you know, but it's glad to see you're back here and you're continuing to do great work and fantastic video. Thank you again. Okay, let's move on to the Chief Executive Officer's report.
Thank you. Well, one of the things I would want to update all of you on is where we think we stand in the transition of the front door for FSI from 211 to PEMS, as we discussed at our last board meeting and approved the contract to do that. Meetings of all kinds and at all levels are occurring. And while I'm sure there will be bumps in the road, because there always are when you transition and start, we're really very confident that not only will PIMS and our people be ready by April 1st, but that as time goes on, they're really building in some pieces that should be significant improvements in the in the experience that families have when they call, and actually connecting them to the right services if it's not FSI. So we've enjoyed continued support from 211 as we look forward to this transition, and PIMS has sort of moved heaven and earth to make sure it happens. They will. There is being built a robust communication plan to the community to let folks know that there is a new phone number. We're all well aware that people will still call 211 for a long time for this. So we're at 211's request, we're sort of developing what that script would look like when they receive calls so that that can go as smoothly as it can. Again, we're really hopeful that this is going to be a major improvement in the experience that our families have, and we're really appreciative both to 211 and to PIMS in helping make this transition go well. Many of our staff members have also done double backflips in order to make some of this happen so quickly, and we appreciate that. I mentioned at the Finance Committee meeting, so some of you have heard this, but Juvenile Welfare Board is a proud member of the Pinellas Race Equity Leadership Council. That's facilitated by the Foundation for Healthy St. Pete, but includes Pinellas County. Barry Burton made a wonderful presentation at our most recent meeting. City of St. Pete, Duke Energy, Pinellas Education Foundation, and others. So that is a group and an effort that I directly participate in. You have or will receive invitations to a couple upcoming special events. The first is Monday, April 4th. We have Growing Hope, Tools and Connections for Young People and Their Families. This is an in-person event on Monday, April 4th in the evening, 6 to 8:15 at St. Pete College Tarpon Springs campus. So for me, it's a really long way, but I'm going to spend the day in Tarpon Springs and see some other things that are going on there. It's intended for young people ages 10 and older, their parents, guardians, educators, community leaders, other folks. And we are the key sponsor and have provided for the keynote speaker, who we think will be very exciting. And other sponsors include University of South Florida College of Public Health's Harrell Center for Family Violence, as well as Zero Suicide Partners of Pinellas. So once again, a good collaboration with JWB sort of at the core. And then Friday, April 29th, again, I think you've received save the dates, maybe invitations as well. We will have our 75th Anniversary Awards Luncheon. We are so excited to be able to do that. We will be at the Coliseum, so we have as much space as we can have to socially distance, which we hope will encourage more people to attend. And we will be honoring our 2021 Kids First Cooperman Bogue awardees. And as you saw and you've seen here, there are 12 such awardees, and they are humbly so excited when we honor them, and it's exciting. And also the Spence Education recipients, and for the first year, the inaugural Dillinger McCabe Leadership Award. So it should be a special time to be together, and I encourage you to come if you can. And that closes my report unless there are other questions.
Are there any questions? Do we have informational items? If anyone has any questions on the informational items, if not, we'll move on. We have an open agenda. Do we have any No cards. Mr. Butler, anniversaries? We do? Oh. Oh, no problem. Please, if you go ahead and. Just turn on your microphone. Okay, so. You may just want to stand next to him, and there you go.
I need to be away from him in order to see him signing. Okay, super. I'm gonna just.
You want to sit, yeah, if you want to sit over here, there you go. Yes.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Maurice Marchushian, and I work with the youth and families as a support specialist at the Family Center on Deafness. We all at FCD, the staff and the board, as well as the families and the clients that represent, send our dearest thanks to all that you do at JWB to support our center. Pinellas County deaf community could not do what we are able to do without you. All of our programs and services, our ASL classes, our robotics competition team, serving 0 to high school, providing food pantry, on and on and on. We could not provide these programs without your support. And we've brought a card to thank you. I'll turn it over to our executive director now.
Good morning,
you.
everyone. Thank you so much for all that you have done to support the Family Center on Deafness. In almost the 2 years that I've been at FCD, we have been able to accomplish so many great things and get out to the greater community. And we are now actually getting calls and contacts from other parts of the state of Florida looking to see what we're doing. We actually have an organization trying to replicate what we have here in Pinellas County over in Hillsborough. And so we are so honored and grateful. And as was mentioned, we could not do it without you. So we actually had families, board members, and clients make a card so that when you are thinking about what you're doing and decisions that you have to make that are so difficult, we want you to think that every day, because of the work that you do, we are able to do what we can do within the deaf and hard of hearing community of Pinellas County. And we cannot thank you enough for all of your support over the years. So thank you.
We thank you for this card, but more importantly, we thank you for all the hard work that you are doing. And we look forward to continue to working together to meet the needs of the community. And hopefully, you can expand this and be the guiding light in other counties across Florida and across the U.S. So again, thank you so much for all the work that you've done. Thank you. Okay, is that anything else do we have? If not, Mr. Butler?
Well, here it is. These are the February anniversaries. We'll start out with Jamar Lopez, 2 years. And then we have Janine Evoli, 30 years. And we congratulate you. That'll do it.
Thank you, sir. As you can see, there is the future meetings that are listed on the back of the board agenda. And if we have no further comments or questions or concerns, I'll adjourn this meeting.